In today's video, we're going to go through the numbers of the TREB Condominium Report for the fourth quarter of 2021. Go through some numbers, shares of condominiums sold by area and condo type, a lot of numbers. Let's get to it. Hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, back with another video for you guys here today. You can find my contact information in the description box with regards to my Gmail, my Instagram, and my office. Feel free to get in touch with me with any questions you have with regards to, once again, anything discussed in this video or anything discussed generally. Furthermore, you can find the link to my newsletter in the description box. Feel free to go follow the newsletter for market updates and stats, some of the charts we discuss in these videos, and pre-construction project floor plans and prices. Lastly, feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review only if you wish to do so. You're not obliged to do so whatsoever. Enough of that. Let's get to the point of today's video, which is the fourth quarter of 2021 in terms of the condo market across the GTA. We're going to go through the TREB market report on that regard and see where things left off in 2021 with regards to the fourth quarter. Now, of course, at the time of recording of this video is January 30th, and there's 30 days into the new year. That is not accounted for in this report, but I have made weekly condo market updates and videos on a weekly basis touching on the new year in 2022. Fourth quarter of 2021 accounts for from October to December, and in total 7,815 units were transacted. Now this only accounts for resale, right? We're not accounting for pre-constructions or assignment. This represented a year-over-year increase of 21% despite a drop in listings. So what we had was the number of transactions went up by 21% when we look at fourth quarter of 2020 in the midst of a inventory, not to be dramatic, but inventory crisis of a kind. Well, how much of a drop in listings were we looking at? Well, this 21% increase in transactions is against the backdrop of a 29% decrease of listings, wherein in the fourth quarter of 2021 there was about 8,700 listings that came onto the market. Now, I've seen a lot of people take this and run away with it, and that sounds cynical, right? There is an accuracy to the point to be made that it's such a hot market, and I've made this point myself in the past, that there's such buyer demand coupled with the low inventory. You're going to see more transactions even despite the decrease in listings. What people leave out from that accurate assessment, once again, that I have made, is the continuation of that, which is last year there was such ample inventory because compared to demand was lower last year overall. We were not dealing with normal market conditions in the fourth quarter of 2020, right? So it's not just that it's such a hot market now. It is the case that it's such a hot market, plus the fact that it was actually cool, buyer-friendly buyers market in the fourth quarter of 2020. That's why we saw more listings, because there were less buyers interested in condominiums at that moment in time, coupled with the decrease in rental income due to the worldwide event. So there was ample listings, landlords trying to sell, investors trying to sell, and users trying to sell, but not enough demand, which caused the buyer's market. Hence, once again, more listings, less transactions, more inventory, less demand. Now it's the flip side. Less inventory and way more demand. That's just to put across the complete picture here. Let us look at this chart that was included in the reports, wherein we see a breakdown in terms of year over year in fourth quarter terms of average sold prices by area. Now, off the top, I have to declare, when you see TREB areas, TREB total, think of TREB areas as pretty equivalent to the entirety of the GTA. There are technical differences, of course, but in practice, it's very much so equivalent to the entirety of the GTA. Here we once again see the previous mentioned number, 7,800 sales, an increase year over year overall in terms of all GTA/TREB areas, and in terms of average sold price, an increase of $100,000. Now, once again, last year's numbers, and this will account for all the regions and areas we will discuss, are a little underreported, not in the sense that there were more transactions and they were underreported in that sense. More so it was particular circumstances. Last fourth quarter of 2020 was the rare exception where it was a buyer-friendly / buyer's market, right? Things start to change into the new year, peaking in March and April of the new year. So when we go through these year-over-year comparisons for the fourth quarters, keep that in mind, that we're comparing it to a historically low point for the condo market in Toronto and GTA. The city of Toronto, in terms of sale price, average sold price, we see in the fourth quarter of 2021 represented an average sold price of $739,000, an increase from the $644,000. Furthermore, an increase in transactions by a factor of almost 1,000 transactions / sales. Furthermore, York Region here, we see an increase once again in sales by about 100 and an average sold price by more than $100,000. Wherein from fourth quarter of 2020, we went across York Region in terms of average sold price from an average sold price of $573,000 to an average sold price of $689,000. And for those who are very familiar with this channel and work with me, know how bullish I have been on York Region, but more particularly Richmond Hill, as its future growth potential, I think, is one of the best actually. But more than ever, I saw working with buyers, and once again, I always say this in every video, so apologies for the repetition, but I don't just purely go based on the quantitative, I combine that with the qualitative, which is my everyday experience with buyers and sellers on the ground. More than ever in 2021, particularly fourth quarter, me and my buyers for condominiums, who were end users and investors alike, did consider York Region, particularly Richmond Hill and Vaughan, more so, considered those options in combination of Toronto options. Of course, it's a case-by-case basis. Sometimes buyers' areas are not that flexible, right? In the case they were flexible, we did consider York Region more than ever for our buyers in 2021. What I was surprised with looking at this chart in terms of fourth quarter is the Durham improvement. Of course, Durham is not yet a lively condo market, but in the years to come, there is a lot of development headed towards that direction in terms of condominiums, both of the townhome variety and the apartment variety. And what's more so interesting in terms of the Durham example is that it is an increase, right, going from $473,000 in average sold price in 2020 in terms of fourth quarter of 2020 to $559,000 in average sold price in fourth quarter of 2021. That is quite interesting, and that's more than I would have assumed, right? Here the numbers have corrected, right, my everyday experience. But what's more interesting than the average sold price increase is just the minimal increase in sales. So it's still about the same number of sales. I assure you, when we look at the number of sales in the fourth quarter of 2022, for instance, when we do that video, we'll see way more sales here. And once again, Durham, in my opinion, is the next region to watch for in terms of a growing condominium market. There's a lot of jobs and people going there, and I think one of the first signs of a growing community and area in terms of all aspects, but particularly real estate, is once there is a lot of condo development, that is a pretty good indicator that people are generally pretty optimistic about the demographic growth in that area, and that also has a positive impact on detached and freehold options. Not to say that Durham has struggled by any means in that regard. In that regard, it's actually outpaced almost every other single area in the GTA. Here is another interesting chart for the TREB market report for the fourth quarter of 2021 with regards to the condo market, Toronto and GTA wide. We see here that this bar graph breaks down the average sold and median sold prices by bedroom number. Off the bat, some may actually be quite curious as to why the average sold price for 3 bedrooms is less than 2 bedrooms. To the best of my explanation, if I were to provide an explanation, having not yet gone through that particular comparison in more detail, my hypothesis at this current moment is that it's because 3-bedroom condominiums quite nowadays rare, and if they're new, they're multi-million-dollar penthouses. And if they're, of the older variety, they're quite older, right? Meaning, in other words put, they're more depreciated condominiums of the 30-year age range. As a result, that gap in age and size is reflected in the average sold price. But yet at this point in moment in time, it's just a hypothesis and I haven't verified that. And also keep in mind, this is for all areas, right? If we were to look at this exact bar graph in terms of the highest average sold prices, it would still probably remain the same in terms of obviously from bachelors being the cheapest, 1, then 1+1, 2, then 2+1. But the dollar points would be much higher on the graph. Here, for instance, you see 2+1, you're looking at $800,000 to $850 according to this, and this is all across all areas once again. But for instance, within the city of Toronto, you have to factor that up by $50,000 to $100,000. Within downtown, a 2+1, of course, there are exceptions, right? But in good buildings, sometimes new buildings and great areas in downtown, you're looking at $1 million plus, right? You're looking at $1 million plus, frankly, especially with regards to the condo market in 2022, which according to my previous video, which I made in the weekly condo market update, which you should watch, is quite hot right now. It's crazy hot. And here we're gonna end with this last graph, which is a pie chart that shows you the shares of condominiums by bedroom type. And here we see, of course, 32% of sales came from 2 bedrooms in the fourth quarter of 2021, with about only 25% of sales coming from 1+1 and 15% of sales coming from 1 bedrooms. 2 bedrooms making up this much of the pie chart in terms of total sales does not surprise me. And I actually expect this to get a little bit bigger going forward. I could be corrected on that front, but frankly speaking, if the hypothesis that I have, many others have as well, it's not as if this is my original genius idea, that a lot of people will shift towards the condominium market as they already have, but even more so in the duration of 2022, because they are priced out of detached and freehold properties, then naturally speaking, you're going to see a greater uptick in demand for the 2 bedrooms. Not to say bachelors or 1 bedrooms will not appreciate, they surely will, and I have my own reasons for those. But if there is going to be a shift of the end user from the detached or the townhome or the semi, we're going to see more volume in terms of 2 bedrooms, and we're going to see a higher uptick in prices. That's why I think going forward for the year 2022, in the short run to 2023, 2 bedrooms might actually represent a higher growth than 1+1s. In the longer run, I do think 1+1s are still going to be better, but in the shorter term, I think 2 bedrooms will represent more growth for you for your investment. Now, I always say, once again, this is generally speaking, you can find bachelors that will outpace certain 1 bedrooms, right? But I hope that's clear that within reason, we're talking generally. Quickly ending in terms of what we're seeing in 2022 so far. Once again, right now, 29, 30 full days into 2022. I've made plenty of videos on that. Go check those out. But right now, everything I see coming onto the market, particularly in downtown Toronto and North York to Midtown, is 9 out of 10 listings is now for bidding wars, right? So there's an offered presentation date, there's an offer date, and there is the entire day is booked with showings. And I'm not just speaking from the buyer's perspective. I sold a unit, for instance, in 11 Bogart. I sold it for $130,000 above asking. We sold it only 2 full days onto the market. We had 20 agents that showed in within those 2 days. I sold another unit in North York, 3237 Bayview. Once again, it was only on the market for 2 days. We weren't even going for a bidding war. We just got multiple offers, and naturally speaking, I have to represent my client and try to get her and him the best price. So we sold it for about $20,000 above asking, not even trying to go for a bidding. So both on the buyer side and the seller side and the numbers, quantitative, qualitative, I see that 2022 thus far is a very, very hot market. And I think for most buyers, particularly investors, you have to weigh the following dilemma. Do I get into the market now with more competition at a lower price, or do I wait down the line for the rates to potentially go up and competition to diminish, but I'm going to be dealing with higher prices? Because for a long time, this is what I've been saying. I think competition will lessen if you wait later in the year, but I think prices will steadily increase, maybe at a lower rate than the prices have increased thus far, but nonetheless, you're going to be looking at higher prices in the future in 2022, but less competition. And that is a dilemma that has to be discussed with you and a professional if you are working with an agent, because that largely depends on your particular finances, what you're getting approved for, how much you're putting down, if you're an end user, investor, so on and so forth. Anyways, that is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate and Remax Realtron Realty Inc. As always, you can find my contact information in the description box with regards to my Gmail, my Instagram, my office, and my TikTok. Feel free to get in touch with me with any questions you may have. Subscribe, comment, rate, and review, and there's the link to my newsletter in the description box as well. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe and stay tuned. Thank you.